Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our employer panel focused on navigating the job and internship search process in a virtual world. We have an awesome lineup of panelists that we will introduce momentarily, but first I want to share a few things with you. It is important now more than ever to have an online presence, to make sure that you have a current Handshake LinkedIn profile, and to continue to build your professional network. Most of our campus career-related events are taking place virtually this semester, including our career fairs. So it was important for the MU Career Council, which is a group made up of career services professionals across campus, to put together this panel focused on giving students a better understanding of the virtual search process. Thanks to those of you who already submitted questions. We had almost 50 questions submitted, so thank you again for that. We tried to condense those questions and categorize them based on topic. Those submitted questions will guide the conversation today, but we also encourage you to drop questions in the chat as we go along here. We will frequently refer to the chat for questions and have designated time at the end of the panel for additional questions. We are recruiting the event to share with the Mizzou community and plan to email it out early next week to those of you who signed up through Handshake. We will also send some additional electronic resources at that time. I now would like to introduce Jennifer Davis, Assistant Director of Career Services for the True-Last College of Business. Jennifer is our moderator for today's panel. Welcome to you, Jennifer, and thank you for moderating for us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Luke, and thank you everyone for attending and participating in the panel today. I'm looking forward to hearing the employer's perspective and their insight. But before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Please remain muted with video off to help with bandwidth if at all possible. We do encourage you to input your questions for the panelists by utilizing the chat feature located here on your computer. Luke, if you can, yep, perfect. So right there is the chat feature for your computer. And then if you are on your phone, the chat feature is located here. There we go. And now, again, we do have questions that have been submitted previously, but feel free to include those into the chat box again. We're going to try to maneuver through as many questions as possible during our time today. Before we get started, we want to say hello to our panelists. Thank you all again for being here. If you could introduce yourself, kind of state the organization that you are with and what positions you typically hire for. We'll kind of open the floor for questions after that. And then Blake, if you could kick us off.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Blake Bevel with the Food and Drug Administration, and I can let you know how to get or apply for a job with the Food and Drug Administration or really any government agency, and take you through some of those mechanics. And so hopefully if you have any questions regarding government employment or what the Food and Drug Administration does and is looking for, hopefully I can answer those questions.
My name is Kristen Fulbrecht, and I'm the Assistant Director and Coordinator for International Student and Scholar Services at Mizzou, and work with our international students to ensure that they have proper work authorization after graduation if they're going to be working inside the U.S. So I'll be available to answer any questions you have about that process.
Hi, my name is Casey Hulsman, and I'm an emerging talent recruiter with Bayer. I specifically support our crop science division with everything with the exception of R&D and IT. However, I do have direct lines of communication with all of my other cohorts, so I'm happy to answer any questions about any co-op, internship, or trainee positions that we offer.
Hi, I'm Jackie Reeder, and I'm with SuretyBonds.com. I'm the operations coordinator, so I directly support all HR processes and functions within SuretyBonds.com. In regards to hiring, we primarily hire for interns, our production team, as well as our development team.
And hi everyone. I'm Katie Turner with Cerner. In terms of what we're recruiting for, so Cerner's based in Kansas City. We're a healthcare IT company, so recruit for a wide variety of healthcare consulting as well as engineering type of opportunities. And then all of our internship opportunities are on the technical side, so software and system engineering internships, which is where I do most of my recruitment. So I focus on our university relations strategy, and happy to be here today and hopefully can answer some questions about how things are going to look different this fall.
Very good. Well, thank you all again. Kind of to jump right in, this question does go out to all of you, honestly. If you could share how your recruiting strategy has been impacted due to COVID-19, I think that would be a good way to start this session, and we'll kind of jump into the various topics.
I can go first. Our recruiting has changed, I would say in the biggest sense, just because of all of the changes in external environment that we can't control. So constantly reevaluating what the business needs are, as well as who do we need and how many people do we need to meet our current goals, and what do our future goals look like, given all of the unknown circumstances going on outside of our company's control. So I would say, rather than knowing exactly how many of the staff we need to recruit or we need to bulk up this area, it's a little bit harder to do that. And obviously, in-person recruitment has been kind of one of my favorite things to do. I feel like you really get to know the company and the people that work at the company when you're face-to-face. So virtual has just been, it's not been bad. It's just been a different way to get to know our applicants.
Sure, so I can go next. So our recruitment strategy has changed, like everyone else's, to be virtual. And I think that's really the biggest change. As far as our businesses go, we're still hiring, and we're still excited to welcome those students to our programs. The one thing I think that could be seen as a negative is, as I believe it was Jackie was just saying, was that that personal connection when you're out at career fairs, talking to people and getting to know them. I feel like that really adds value to your company, and you don't have that opportunity this year with that face-to-face contact.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on, we've traditionally, been at career fairs and also brought students onto our campuses to interview in person with us. And I think that's going to be one really big shift, is we've adopted virtual interviewing for the last couple of years, but not 100%. And so we'll be 100% interviewing virtually for all rounds, which I think as a prospective, student, and as a prospective, new employee, it's really important to maybe get to see the office if you feel like that's going to be something that is a large part of your decision. But obviously, with so many companies working from home and all of us being from home, may not be as important going forward. So it'll be different as we all kind of figure out where we'll be working from in the coming months, and who knows, years. We may all be working from home. So hard to tell.
I'll go next with the Food and Drug Administration, and maybe speaking for all government agencies to some extent. Our recruitment and hiring is the same as it's always been, and the process is the same as it's always been. I would say what we're looking for is the same, and the long-range goals of who we hire is the same. I would say the only difference that we have now would be, once you arrive at the agency, you don't go into the office, you're teleworking, and that is new, and that is a change, and something that we're doing to making changes to address. And hopefully the pandemic's over sooner rather than later. But in the overall scheme of everything, and also I just want to add, we are hiring. We think this thing is over, and we are hiring. FDA is in the business of approving vaccines and approving COVID test kits and all that kind of stuff. we think this thing is going to be over soon. So we haven't changed our business of what we do, inspections of manufacturers that make, medical devices, drugs, foods, all those things. But we're still hiring. The only difference is we telework, and we're quarantined, and so that makes once you get hired different. But the process of applying for a job, getting interviewed, all that's the same. So anyway, that's.
And two, feel free to add questions to the chat box. As we mentioned previously, we'll be taking questions there. Katie, you mentioned virtual interviewing. Would you happen to be able to share any tips for virtual interview preparation during the actual interview and after the interview? Any do's, don'ts that you would like to share?
Yeah, I always talk to my candidates. We anticipate that it's going to be a little bit more nerve-wracking. You don't get to be face-to-face with somebody and kind of get to go off of, their hand gestures like I'm doing now or whatever it is. You lose some of that face-to-face interaction. But for us, the interview process is going to still be the same. We're going to ask the same types of questions, get to know you in the same way. So while we know it's overwhelming and it may be different in your first time interviewing in this model, for us, kind of to what Blake was saying, the process has remained the same. It's just using a different technology. So I would say it's making sure you're comfortable with your technology, making sure that your computer's charged or whatever, again, your phone's charged, whatever it is. And then I would also say, try not to get so hung up on if things happen in the background or, if your doorbell rings or if somebody walks behind you. We're all very used to this environment now that we've been in it for several months now. So give yourself a little bit of grace, I think, is one thing to try not to be so overwhelmed by it. Because in this global pandemic, things are just happening out of our control. So if somebody happens to walk behind you or if your dog barks or something like that, nobody's going to hold that against you, which I think can sometimes, when you're going into those things, be a little overwhelming. But, I promise it's not as daunting as it may seem.
Good, thank you. As we're prepping for interviews, Casey, what would be a good way to go about doing research on companies, and where should students be looking to do that research prior to a virtual interview or even an in-person interview?
Sure. So I would say that you're going to do everything the exact same as you would if you were actually going to a physical interview. So you should prepare exactly the same. Lots of internet research, going to that company's website, finding out what they're all about. You can really assess a company's culture by going to their website. Google is your friend too. So going to Google, seeing some different things that maybe they've done during the pandemic that you can bring up in an interview and talk about. So I would say prepare exactly the same. Utilize your resources. So whether it be, someone that works at the company or has had experience with them, asking them questions, but also looking online and researching on their website. That's going to be the number one tool that you can use is their website.
We just had a question come in for Blake. You mentioned the long-term goals for candidates are still the same for you. What do those long-term goals look like?
Well, basically just our hiring of the general job that ORA, where I work, who we hire, in the 50 states, is a consumer safety officer. We also call them investigators. They do inspections worldwide of medical device manufacturers, drug manufacturers, food manufacturers, depending on, where you're hired, what your background is, and those things. So, the long range goals are the same. We feel like the pandemic will, in time, go away. We'll get out of the bubble, so to speak, and life will become, like it was before the pandemic. So, yeah, we're still, hiring the same numbers to do the inventory of firms worldwide that ship products, medical devices, drugs, foods to this country, and that our citizens consume. So, that's what I meant.
Kristen, what are some of the most frequently asked questions that you and your colleagues are receiving during this time, especially during the pandemic? Could you address any of those for our international students that may be participating in today's session?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the questions we've been receiving from students are in regards to their enrollment for the fall semester. And then a few questions about work authorization afterwards. We are seeing some delays with government agencies in regards to authorization processing. So we are encouraging students to apply as early as possible, just to give their application the most amount of time to be processed before they graduate. But most of our questions we're receiving has to do with online enrollment. Traditionally, there are restrictions on that, and the government has relaxed some of those for our students this year. So thankfully, we're looking forward to students being able to participate in more online courses than what they are traditionally used to.
We did have a question come into the chat regarding, do you feel that it's harder for an international student to find jobs compared to a domestic student?
Finding jobs, not so much, but being hired, yes. Some of that does have to do with sometimes a lack of understanding about visas and the authorizations that are required for them. Some employers may think that there's additional work that's required or sponsorship that's necessary. And for most of you that are nearing graduation, that is not the case. There's a one-time application fee that the student pays to receive their authorization. And then that's typically it. And that will offer students the opportunity to work anywhere from 1 to 3 years after graduation. It's when you start getting into work-sponsored visas that there can sometimes be additional costs and maybe more hesitation from employers because of the significant cost attached to that. But finding jobs, as long as the work is in your field of study, that's not an issue to apply for those positions.
Perfect. I just received a private message. Jackie, I'll ask you this one. When would a good time to start searching for jobs if you're graduating next May? So when would be a good time to start searching for jobs if you're graduating next May?
I always encourage people to, especially if they have a company in mind, go ahead and start the job search as soon as possible. At least start doing your research and getting some additional information into where you want to be when you are graduating, and then really amp up on that, I would say in the beginning of the year, the year prior to the May that you graduate, really just get in there and express your interest and really, market yourself. What experience do you have that could be tied into that particular company? I think that that's a big part of the resume, as well as in the whole interviewing process, is, marketing yourself as an individual who would be be able to make big contributions to the company or department specifically.
Good. Speaking of resumes, Casey, what is one thing you look for on a resume? Are there any tips or suggestions that you have regarding resumes?
Sure. I think probably the biggest concern that students have is they don't have experience at that particular job. So I always tell them to think about what they've done on campus, anything from different school projects or classes that might be related to what you're applying for. Also, community involvement, community service, campus involvement is important. All of those things, student work jobs, all of those things show discipline and commitment. Time management is huge once you get into corporate America or a full-time job after you graduate. So I think thinking of those kind of off-key things that you might not think about, so especially those class projects, highlighting those, any awards that you've received, just really kind of tooting your own horn. You're your own biggest fan, and you're, you know, your biggest promotional tool that you can have. So.
And then Blake, we received another question for you in the chat. We're asking why there are so many restrictions for foreign nationals with most government agencies. This particular student has come across most postdoc opportunities only open for lawful permanent residents. So those open foreign students may have so many restrictions. And then, for example, strictly J1 visas, number of 24 months renewal for STEM students. So Kristen, you may be able to assist on this one as well.
Yes, I do know that, you know, as far as Food and Drug Administration, Office of Regulatory Affairs, which is the investigators that inspect manufacturers within the nation and across the world for the products that we consume or use in, you know, drugs, medical devices, foods, biologics. You know, to qualify for those jobs, you have to be a citizen of this country. I do think there are some opportunities in our centers, which is in the DC area, where they do a lot of pre-market review and approval of medical devices and drugs. And I do think they utilize, to some extent, those that are not citizens of this country. But by and large, the federal government employs citizens of this country.
Speaking of kind of for networking purposes, when it comes to our virtual world that we find ourselves in, the importance of LinkedIn. Jackie, would you be able to touch on a little bit more of LinkedIn and the importance of LinkedIn when it comes to networking?
Sure, absolutely. I think LinkedIn is a great platform for professionally networking. My advice generally is the same, and I think it's more important now that we are virtual, is to make sure it's definitely a professional representation of yourself. So, you know, we're not seeing, you know, selfies, you know, in the sun and things like that. We want to see the professional side of you. We want to see, you know, the accolades. We want to see the awards you got in college. We want to see essentially, you know, kind of a breakdown, somewhat of a type of a resume that you're willing to share on LinkedIn. And then with that, you'll build connections, and there will be, you know, you can exchange recommendations. And that's always nice to see, as well as the interaction on LinkedIn. I do find that it's important to not focus on collecting connections on LinkedIn. I think it's great for building meaningful connections. So if you've interviewed with somebody who you really like and you want to maintain contact with that person, or maybe you found someone who you think could be a great mentor for you moving forward in the future, I definitely recommend, you know, making those connections. But it's just, it's different than you know followers. You want to make sure that they're a little bit more meaningful and that they can help you professionally, and then maybe that can be reciprocated.
Thank you. And this question is posed to everyone. What is your experience with virtual career fairs, if you have participated in them in the past? Or what are you looking forward to participating for virtual career fairs this fall, if this is your first time? But any tips or tricks for individuals on the call today regarding virtual career fairs? And again, this is open to all.
I will say I have not ever done a virtual career fair, but in thinking and preparing for this panel, I was thinking about the upcoming career fairs that MU is hosting, and I got started thinking about it, and I thought, wow, this is actually a really interesting way to recruit. It will be something that for both students and recruiters, it will be a little bit more intimate. So you'll actually maybe get a chance to even build a better relationship, get to know the employer better, get to know the student better, since it won't be kind of, you know, the the intensity of an in-person career fair where you have multiple recruiters, you have lots of students, groups and friends, and cell phones and a lot of distractions at your typical, while they're fun, your typical in-person career fairs. But I think this is an opportunity for us as employers and recruiters, and as you as students, to really take that time to try to enjoy and take what you can from having that one-on-one time with a recruiter.
Any other individuals have experience with virtual career fairs or what you're looking forward to?
I can speak. So I personally don't have any experience with virtual career fairs. I think that the pandemic has prepared us for this since we have all gone virtual. So we are really starting to learn the ropes of what goes on in the virtual world with everything. So I would say something that I'm most looking forward to, and I'm sure the other recruiters on the phone, but I was a little skeptical at first as to how it was going to work and if everyone was going to be seeing a recruiter at the same time. But attending Jennifer's session the other day on what Mizzou is going to use this year was very helpful. And I think that, as Jackie said, it is going to be more intimate, and you are going to get to choose exactly who you want to talk to and what you want to talk to them about. So I think that this is going to give everyone an opportunity to really focus on what they're looking for and what they're wanting, and then also getting the best results.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on kind of what Casey was saying as well. I think it'll be interesting and a little less daunting. There won't be, an auditorium full of employers that you're trying to navigate and kind of push around crowds to find. You can really focus on the maybe top 3 or 5 employers that you were hoping to meet at the career fair and really kind of use those time management skills and chat with them. And of course, also keeping an open mind with what other employers are attending the fair. But I think it'll be good because it'll allow students to kind of focus on those top employers that they have. And, then they're not having to commute to whatever auditorium or whatever it is and things like that. They can really focus on those employers that they want to chat with.
And I would concur with the others. The Food and Drug Administration, and most federal agencies don't have a lot of experience or any with virtual career fairs. I kind of think this right here today, what we're doing is a virtual mini career fair. So with that said, getting a federal government job is a virtual type of process anyway. You apply on USA Jobs, which is, where all federal jobs are announced for a specific time period. So you do that virtually, and then those names get ranked and you get called for interviews. So getting a job at the federal government is a virtual application process, and but yes, career fairs, we don't have any experience at that. This might be our first, me being here at University of Missouri. So probably if the quarantine keeps going, there'll probably be more and more government virtual recruiting exercises for us.
So Casey, people are always saying that company culture is something very important to be looking at when they're looking at an employer to potentially input their application and start within the hiring process. So company culture is a factor that is played into that. Since we are not able to go and visit an employer on site potentially, what is the best way to talk and ask to get that information during the virtual setting that we're in?
Sure. So I'm sure there's lots of people on the phone that feel this way, but it's always fun to talk a little bit about yourself. So one of the favorite questions that people ask me at career fairs is, what do you like most about working for Bayer? And I think when you ask someone that, whether it be in person or virtually, if you are on camera, you're going to be able to tell someone's excitement and passion for what they do. So that would be, kind of one of the things that I would ask about the culture. You know, what is that person most proud of that their company has done recently? Or, you know, what are your favorite parts about your job? Just asking kind of those simple questions that are more getting to know you questions can really tell a lot about a person and a company.
We have a few resume questions I want to pose here. So Katie, how are certificates from LinkedIn considered versus official Institute of Learning? For example, I've earned project management certificate, but have not included on my resume.
It is or is not included on the resume?
It is not included on resume.
Got it. I will go ahead and just add those things to your resume. And in addition to on your resume, linking out to your LinkedIn, I think is important. Not all companies are going to click on it, but they could, you know, if they want to. So it doesn't hurt to go ahead and have it out there, I think is helpful. Any type of certificate is going to be important to have, either whether it be on your LinkedIn or your resume. So I think those types of things are just important to list out.
Yeah. Jackie, we have a freshman. They're interested in learning more about what they should put on their resume if they don't have any experience.
Sure. You can always find, I always look at resumes maybe a little bit different than your typical employer. I think you can find experience, relative experience in a lot of things. So if you had a job in high school and you're looking for an internship, you can always tie, time management, customer service. You can tie certain types of skills and experience to, I don't know, say you were, in the customer service industry and you were a waitress or you took orders. You have to prioritize time management, multitask. You're still developing those skills. Even if you're saying, I don't have any experience, you still, more often than not, you do have skills and you do have experience that would apply. It's just kind of rethinking how you're going to apply those and rethinking how to start writing your resume, knowing that you do have some skills and some experience to share.
And then Kristen, we have a question posed for you. What's the best plan of action for international students to approach any recruiter for internships or jobs, as most recruiters are not confidently answering about any future possibilities at this time?
I don't know, that might be a question for our recruiters, because I would encourage students to just approach in the way that they normally would, but then also be able to provide information about what type of authorization they would need and are able to apply for, so that way they can also be upfront and say, I'm looking for a position and this is how much time I have available on my current work visa. But in terms of approaching recruiters and how that should change, I don't know if anyone else has any other input. My expert area is just in the immigration side of things, not so much the recruitment. But we are also happy to help answer questions. We do get phone calls from businesses and companies all the time. If it's the first time that they've hired an international student and they just need help walking through that process, we are happy to help in any way that we can for either the student or the employer.
And then Blake, when looking at online job postings for large companies with lots of openings, are there key buzzwords to look for that mean entry level?
Well, just for your listeners today and those that might listen to the tape recording, to get a government job, you go to USA Jobs, and just Google USA Jobs and you'll get there. And hopefully, I think I sent a PowerPoint that has a lot of links in it about Food and Drug Administration jobs, how to get a government job, how to get a Food and Drug Administration job, what we're looking for. But I would say one or two things, just to answer your question specifically. Generally speaking, a college graduate would be looking for a government job at the GS5 or GS7 level. with the Food and Drug Administration, Office of Regulatory Affairs. We would be looking for GS5, GS7s, to be an investigator, inspector. You're going to get trained. You're going to go up to a GS12 or 13 almost automatically. It goes up a couple steps every year. The pay is really good. You can Google GS pay scale or OPM GS pay scale, and that's going to give you the government pay scale. So you go from 5.7 to 12/13. You go from a 5 to a 7 in 12 months, a 7 to a 9 in 12 months, 9 to 11 in 12 months, 9 to 11, 11 to 12 in 12 months, 12 to 13 in about 12 months. So you can see the pay scale, see what you're going to make. Once you top out, you're going to go up, you're going to start getting to step increases. And, once you get to the 13, there's only 2 more steps, 14 and 15. So, I mean, you're not going to get rich, but it's a great salary. You can raise a good family. You can, it's a good job. It's, generally speaking, it's recession proof, COVID proof. And so it's a good job to have right now. Hopefully I answered that question. How do you see the entry level jobs? It's 5, 7. If you have a lot of experience, you might can go 9, 11 if you have some industry experience too. If you have a legal, law degree or you're a medical doctor, there's also some pay for engineers and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's basically how you find out if it's an entry level job. 5, 7 is what we're looking for.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you.
But one more thing to add, it doesn't stay there long. It jumps up every 12 months. So
gotcha.
Pay scale, see where you're going to be in 12 months, 24 months. We train you well. You're not going to know how to do a pacemaker inspection when you get out of college. But we're going to train you how to do that in the first 12 months. So, I mean, there's a lot of training in the federal government. And then sometimes people go back to industry in a few years and really make big.
Thank you, Blake. Casey, where should students have an online presence, and how can they use it positively to impact their candidacy?
Sure. So I would say LinkedIn is great to have an online presence there. I think it's interesting for some of the previous interns and co-ops that I've worked with that have a bigger presence to see what they post. So they'll post different updates about some of the projects that they're working on, their first and last day if they're involved on campus, doing campus events. One of the gals that was a previous intern was recognized for service at her university, also recognized within a service sorority that she was in. So I think just updating with important milestones in your life, also when you graduate, and staying connected through there with different leaders and people that you have met along the way is always, positive.
And if I could piggyback on Casey really quick, I would add, and I know Mizzou uses Handshake, so I would say having your information updated on Handshake is super important. Cerner is a premium partner with Handshake, so we reach out to students. That's kind of our preferred platform. I would say equally LinkedIn and Handshake. And then within Handshake, if you haven't gone in and spent some time kind of updating your student profile, you can also indicate, post-graduation where you're looking to be. And so that's really helpful from an employer standpoint. So we know, are you looking to relocate to New York or San Francisco or the Kansas City metro? I think even things like that is really helpful so that you're being targeted by the right employers based on where you're also hoping to be, whether it be for an internship or full-time opportunities. So if you haven't looked at some of those detailed features within building out your Handshake profile, even if you're an underclassman or things like that, it's just really helpful for employers to know so that, again, you're not getting bombarded by employers who aren't in your preferred location. in something, you know, that I think maybe not a lot of students are aware of. So that's something that would be helpful as well.
Good. And then Jackie, what is the best way to follow up with a company after filling out an online application or submitting a resume, whether that's through Handshake, LinkedIn, or the company website?
Sure. I always I manage our careers at suretybonds.com website, which is how our applicants do apply for positions with us. And I do find it helpful when applicants ask a question because it helps that re-engagement process. So if it can be something from, you know, when you just say, I'm just following up, you know, it's helpful, but it's also not really going after that re-engagement. If you say, you know, hi, I'd like to check in on that status of my application. Is there a time frame in which I can expect to hear back from you? Or frame it in the question, do you need anything else from me? Something like that, which helps kind of get that re-engagement going again. That's just in the circumstance where you're applying and you haven't gotten anything maybe back, you haven't gotten any type of response. I would definitely add a question in there to just kind of work on that re-engagement.
We have a few more resume questions. Casey, is GPA on a resume or CV relevant to employers, especially for a PhD graduate?
So I don't have a lot of experience with PhDs, but we definitely hire a lot of them. So I would say that from the resume reviews and mock interviews I've done with some of our internships, co-ops, trainees that I work with, that a GPA is important. But I also think when you get to that PhD level, including things like publications that you have, presentations that you've given are also equally as important. So I would say if it's not as high as you would like, then you could leave it off as long as you're highlighting those other skills and those other accomplishments that you've done while getting your PhD.
And then Blake, are high school jobs relevant to add to your resume at this point, or should we replace that with college scholarships or awards that they have received?
I think it's all good. I think it shows who you are as an individual, a little bit of your personality and your the environment you grew up in. When you apply for a federal job, you're going to be ranked, and it probably won't be considered too much initially by the HR people ranking you, but once you get to the interview process, it's all about getting to know you, and that's who you are. So yeah, very relevant to put on there. You wouldn't want to go into great detail, but just explain the person, who you are, what you did, when you were younger, and it's all good stuff. In the interview, you're just trying to get to know you, and pick the best. If you get to the interview stage, you're more than halfway there. We're just going to pick the best person that we think can do the job the best. So yeah, put it on there because it tells us who you are.
And then Katie, how do you stand out in an increasingly diverse applicant pool, especially now that the applicant pool may include a lot more people since remote work is now an option?
Yeah, I would say just to make sure that you have all of your information accurate on your resume. I think that's something that people sometimes, again, are trying to stand out, so they add more to their resume, more skills, more technologies that they know, languages. And again, if you're going to list it on your resume, we're probably going to ask about it. So just be prepared that if you're going to list it, that you feel comfortable answering it. In addition, I would say, utilizing those tools like LinkedIn and Handshake, responding to recruiters if they reach out to you about a position, again, that shows your desire for the job, that I think would help a student to stand out, is making those connections and following up, with thanks for reaching out and timely correspondence, I think would also help a student stand out in a larger applicant pool.
And then we do have a question in the chat box. This could be posed to anyone. bear with me, it's a little lengthy. So, do you all have any journalism career advice? I'm a convergence major and I plan to graduate in May. I specialize in community writing, sports photos, and drone photography, videography, since I have my FAA license. I've been using LinkedIn and I have been uploading my website with material for my past 2 internships. I am struggling to figure out individual companies that I should try to target since they are all independent of each other. I appreciate any advice that you may have.
Okay, I'll take a stab at it. So this was kind of a long-winded question, but in a good way. So it sounds to me like the student has a wealth of experience that I believe, were you saying he was looking for an internship or was he looking for?
It looks like looking for full-time. I believe they've had 2 internships already.
2 internships already. So I think, continuing to add to your portfolio, it sounds to me like you have a broad range of skills, which to the right company people will create positions for people with broad knowledge. They could hire you for a specific area and you could kind of help build that out. I'm not an expert in communications or any marketing in that regard either, but just hearing what you are asking, it seems to me that the skills that you have will definitely be worthwhile to the right company. I would definitely focus on those companies that have large marketing emphasis. So like here at suretybonds.com, we place a high degree of emphasis onto our online marketing and our marketing team and our development team. I would look for companies who are putting that, that amount of effort into building up their marketing departments, and those companies too. And don't rule out the smaller companies either, because some of those smaller companies might be looking for someone just like you that has that wide of a skill set that they could really use to help build it out. I hope that helps answer that question to a degree.
Just to note, feel free to reach out to your academic unit career services office or the Hire Mizzou Tigers webpage for additional support as well. And then we do encourage all students to participate in our virtual career fairs that are coming up. We've had a few more questions regarding the virtual career fairs. I'd like to touch on some of those again as well.
If I know time is running out, I'm assuming we end at 4. I would like to just mention 2 things about getting a federal government job that is super critical for your listeners. One is whenever you apply for a federal government job, including Food and Drug Administration job, there's a list of questions that you answer, and the answers to your question are basically as 1 to 5. No experience versus you're an expert. Be sure to go on the extreme edge of your experience. I'm not telling you to falsify anything. I'm just saying the people who review these things and rank people, everybody is using their babysitting knowledge, their lawn mowing knowledge to push that up to the 4s and 5s. So don't get cut off by an HR person. You think about everything you've ever did and answer those questions as high as you can. If you can relate it, relate it. The second thing is when we open a job, it's generally for 5 to 10 days, but we cut the job off after we have a certain number of applicants that the HR person can actually process. We get thousands. So, jobs get cut off on the first day. Make your resume, if you want a federal job, create a resume. When the job comes out, apply for it on the first day. Because if you wait to the end date, the job application actually gets cut off when a certain number of applicants apply. So that end date is not actually accurate. It's when a certain number of people, so it may be open for 2 weeks. Get it in the first 24 hours. You might make the cutoff. and HR will consider you. Answer those questions as best you can, but lean on the side of babysitting and lawn mowing gives you some experience in this particular area. So don't cut yourself short. Sorry, I just wanted to add those two things to get a federal job.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate it. So Casey, we have a sophomore on the call upcoming for this year. Do you think it would be worthwhile to keep their achievements from high school on the resume, or should I focus only on college from now on?
Sure. So I think a general good rule of thumb is after you've completed your freshman year of college, you're probably going to get more involved and get some additional experiences where you can drop off some of that information from high school. That's just a personal preference, but we really look for people that are involved in the community, involved in student organizations, involved in organizations that are related to your major. So I think that those kind of take precedence over your high school experience.
And then Katie, we have a December engineering graduate. In the event that people in my position end up graduating without a job lined up this December, what would be good ways to build skills in the meanwhile?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, focusing on things maybe like certificates or taking courses. I know there's a lot of different websites where you can, we hire a lot of engineers, so you can go and become Oracle certified or Java certified or those types of things. Again, those types of things on your resume as well as your LinkedIn are really helpful. And then also building, that database of your network and connecting with recruiters or employers that you're interested in and asking, if they don't have a job lined up, when they're planning to open jobs again or things like that would just be good so that you also have like a timeline in mind.
And then Jackie, what would be some tips for landing an internship or a job, kind of maneuvering through this semester?
Tips for landing an internship or a job? I mean, just putting yourself out there in this new environment. Also keeping in mind that this is also, uncharted territory for employers too. We've never been faced with a pandemic that changes the way we do things. So I think it kind of levels the playing ground a little bit more for interns and applicants. I think to land it, really just keep kind of what Blake was saying, don't sell yourself short, make sure that you emphasize everything that you've got going on for you, every skill that you have, emphasize that, bring it to the table and take advantage of kind of these more intimate types of discussions where, typically in a virtual interview, it would be, the hiring manager say that was me and then the one applicant, and we could spend up to an hour and a half, 2 hours discussing the job, discussing the company, discussing how the candidate could fit there, and then asking questions, kind of as I believe Casey mentioned earlier, turning it around and asking us questions, saying, what do you like about this company? What has your company done to do, meet this standard, or what have they done to better the community? What have they done in response to the COVID-19 crisis? I would ask a lot of questions, and I think that also shows your enthusiasm and your engagement with the interviewer as well as the company.
And Casey, what has wowed you in a virtual interview setting so far?
So I actually haven't had the opportunity to do a virtual interview with anyone yet. So this is all new. I think I probably will be wowed because I already am just, surprised and amazed at everything that students are doing. For example, we had virtual internships this year, something we've never done before, and we were able to still host all of our interns and co-ops. So hearing their impact that they made at the end of the season, we have poster sessions where they review everything they've done this summer. So just seeing what they did without being on site or with anyone to help them or any mentors to watch over them, having free reign was just amazing. And I mean, just goes to show what the future has to hold for us. It's pretty great.
And this question can be posed to all. A student has heard of some people who are graduating in May or have graduated in May. might just go right into getting an MBA instead of attempting to navigate the job market. What would be some thoughts on that strategy?
Just one thing to add: to get a federal government job, we're very slow. So it takes about 6 months. If you want a job in May, start applying in January to USA Jobs. That's how slow we are, 6 months. If you apply to 25, 50 jobs, you're going to get one. So, you know, that's really my response to that question.
I can add on to it. I think if that's something that you're interested in, if an MBA was part of your plans, go for it. If not, I don't know that I would encourage it if you're kind of just doing it just to navigate the COVID world. To the conversations we've all kind of been mentioning, a lot of employers are hiring. So you may not get the dream job that you had initially planned on and kind of what maybe you had been looking for, but there are jobs out there. So if you would rather, you know, build up your resume with different skills and experiences and doing that, and you had planned on entering the workforce anyway, I think that may be a good path. However, if you were planning to get an MBA at some point anyway, or a master's, there's no harm in getting it out of the way. So I think, you know, just making sure that whatever path you choose aligns with your goals. Otherwise, I think, you know, just picking the one that is going to be most applicable. I don't know if that's the right word.
And then Kristen, we have another one regarding immigration status. If for some reason we have to close campus this fall and classes are moved online, how will that affect my immigration status?
As of right now, that is not going to be an issue. That was from guidance released by the Student Exchange Visitor Program. That is no longer relevant. So that was from July guidance, and that is no longer in place. So if we switch to online, you're okay.
Let's see, Casey, we have one regarding job postings. When creating a job posting, how strict are requirements for the position? Do you actually need to meet all of them, majority, or half?
I would say probably all of them if it's included in the job description. A lot of companies, and I'm sure, you know, Katie, Jackie, and Blake can all attest to this, there are certain things called knockout questions. So they are just essentially finding out if you have the minimum requirements to do the job. So for example, for a lot of our internships, you have to be at least sophomore status and majoring in, say, mechanical engineering if you're applying for a mechanical engineering internship. And if you mark no on that question, then we probably aren't going to contact you because you don't meet the qualifications of the job. So I think when they're more generalizations, do you have great communication skills, stuff like that, you know, and you think you have great communication skills, definitely mark yes. But if it's more of a specific job requirement, then, you know, if you answer those questions or you don't have those skills, we will figure that out after we call you to interview you.
Katie, should I apply for full-time jobs even though I haven't had an internship yet due to COVID? I graduate in May.
Yes, if you were looking for opportunities at Cerner, yes, we would consider, you know, a May 2021 grad for full-time opportunities. All of our internships would be in the summer, so a student graduating in May wouldn't qualify for those because their degree at that point would have already been awarded. So yes, I would say, and I think Blake mentioned this, we hire well ahead of a graduation date as well. So our recruiting process doesn't take 6 months, but we hire students in the fall for a May graduation date. So I have students starting with us now here in August who we recruited last fall who graduated in May. So yes, I would definitely say start your full-time job search.
And then Kristen, regarding OPT workshops, what are the dates and how should we attend them? Also, can you tell us what is the date in September we can apply for OPT, especially for this fall 2020 grad students, just to be in the early applicant pool?
Yes, I'm doing the math right now. The earliest you can apply if you're graduating in December is going to be Saturday, September 19. So that's going to be the earliest day, and that would be the day that you could mail your application. And then obviously you have to have the recommendation from our office, so I'd recommend turning it in at least 1 week before. So that way we can get everything back to you. You can prepare your shipment and have it sent out so it will arrive to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services on September 19. For PT workshops, we do not have our fall schedule posted yet. They should start usually by the second or third week of classes, and they will be posted on the International Center website. And it will be done through Zoom. So you'll be able to see our calendar in MU Connect and sign up for the day that works best for you. And then our website is international.missouri.edu/ISSS. And I can send that in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. And this question can be posed to all, so any of you could take this one. This individual has applied to dozens of jobs since I graduated in May, but haven't had a single interview quite yet. What tips do you have for making it to the interview round?
I would say, and I know Casey kind of addressed this, but on the Cerner side, meeting all of the qualifications on a job posting for us is a non-negotiable. So on our basic qualifications, an applicant would have to meet all of those. So I would just say to make sure that you're reading through the job posting and the qualifications very, very carefully, and making sure that you are meeting all of those would be a tip that I have. And then if you are getting to the at least phone interview round or first round, or we do a coding challenge with some of our jobs, making sure that you're prepared for those and really putting your best foot forward and emphasizing why you're interested in the position is also really helpful, and hopefully can get you into those further rounds.
And if I may add on to what Katie is saying too, at suretybonds.com, we're a little bit more flexible in terms of, you know, what we exactly require for each position. We like to have a very diverse group of individuals, and we train people on specific jobs that we need them to do as well. So for us as hiring, you know, cover letters are something that I think get forgotten sometimes, and those are some of the best ways that you're going to be able to really show kind of your own spunk, your pizzazz, your interests, kind of highlight yourself with that cover letter. Because yes, the resume is very focused on your skills, your education, awards, things of that nature, but your cover letter is not only focused on those things, but it's also a way for you to kind of get your message across of who you are, why you're interested in the position, why you're interested in the company. So I think that that's something that can sometimes be forgotten, especially in an application process where it's, you know, you're filling out the application online and you can upload, you know, your resume, and some people just don't think to do the cover letter. And I'm just a big proponent for the cover letter. I think that can really help in a lot of instances.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you're doing something over and over again and you're getting bad results, I think you need to evaluate the process that you're using and change it up a little bit. And I tried to make mention to, you know, for a government job, there's so many people applying and so many people answering the 20-25 questions at the extreme end of that, you need to be a little bit inventive. Definitely you're going to get figured out at the interview process, but you got to make it to the interview. So don't cut yourself short. If you babysitted and you cared for someone for 4 or 5 hours for many years when you were in high school, you get credit for that. You know, that's a good thing that you did. And you know, take credit, be inventive, be creative of things that you can do, that you have experience doing, and that you like to do, and that you can do well. So everybody, you know, it's a competitive job market out there, so don't sell yourself short. And you know, you can answer that question at the interview. Well, yeah, I watched over, you know, 3 kids and, you know, quite a bit, and you know, they were sick or whatever, and you did a good job of it, and you enjoyed it, and you know, you might have saved their lives. So So, you know, don't sell yourself short. It's not just about going to college and getting an A or a B. It's about your life experiences. So if you're doing this, if you're doing something over and over again and you're not making it to the interview, change that up a little bit.
And I can add to all of these things, which were all great examples. I think everyone has been there applying for jobs. You're not hearing anything back. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see students make is not tailoring their resume to each specific job posting. So while that seems tedious and a lot of extra work, it definitely is. I think that doing that can actually help showcase your skills a little bit better. So for example, if you're applying to 5 jobs at Bayer, but they're all completely different jobs and different functions, but you have experience within them, making sure to highlight that experience that specifically relates to that job for that job posting, and then posting a completely different resume, just maybe retooled, formatted a little bit different to that other job. So I think that that is something that students fail to do. They just kind of have that catch-all resume, and you really need to tailor your resume for each job you apply to.
Great information. And we are inputting a few things into the chat box. So hiremizzoutigers.com. You can utilize that to access your academic unit's career service office, so they can be a resource for you to review your resume prior to submitting. And then Nikki Fickle, she has also included some guides for resumes, interviews, and cover letters, also located at the Hire Mizzou Tigers website. So feel free to access those to take a look at and connect with your career services office. Kind of speaking regarding cover letters, do you have any tips for writing cover letters? Are there any things you like to see in a cover letter, or things that you would tell people definitely to avoid while writing it? Feel free, Katie, if you have any thoughts on cover letters.
So I'll kind of take the other side of the coin in that I usually don't recommend cover letters. Our system only allows you to attach one attachment in it, and so for that we always do recommend a resume. But with that said, I know every employer does things differently, so I would just say, you know, if there is one that's encouraged on that company's website, obviously just take the thoughtful time to write it. But from a Cerner standpoint, we don't usually review them. We focus more on the resume and your experience. So, you know, that's a little different, and every employer does things a little bit differently.
Any others regarding cover letters?
I would say, you know, try to keep it to 1 page. It doesn't need to be, you know, everything. We're going to look at your resume for your skills and technical, your technical skills and experience and all of that. I would just recommend, when I was younger and in college, I worked for career services, and I was told to not, which is very difficult, but not use I too often in a cover letter. I achieved this, I did this, I did this. While we know what we're talking about and we know the focus is going to be on the student, just trying to come up with other ways to phrase those types of things, and then just keeping them relatively short into maybe like a 3-paragraph type letter, where we can kind of get a little bit more of a feel for your writing style, a feel for your personality, and an overall sense of your accomplishments.
And then could you, this is posed to all panelists, could you touch on the importance of building your network and finding a mentor?
I can start again unless someone else wants to go. I feel like I keep doing this. Sorry. I think if you find someone who you really connect with, whether it be, you know, someone you meet at an event, like virtual career fair or regular career fair. I've met a few students who I still have relationships with today as they navigate the rest of their collegiate process and they're entering the workforce. I myself formed relationships and had mentors as I navigated from you know, college to full-time work. So I think as long as it makes sense and it's a supportive relationship and there's growth to become from that, I definitely think that everyone should find a mentor if it makes sense, not to force it, but just if it makes sense.
Sure, and I could say a little bit about mentors. Mentors kind of come, from different places and different times in your life. They don't necessarily have to be in the same profession as you. So for example, when I graduated college and I started my career, I had a supervisor that actually at the time I wasn't a huge fan of, just different management style than I was used to. And now we are very close. We're very good friends. We have dinners together. Me and my husband go out with him and his wife. And we always bounce career ideas off of each other. So I think it's just that understanding of the other person and what makes them unique and special. And, they have a different perspective than you. So I would say nurturing that relationship, and we have stayed in contact. Clearly, I graduated college a long time ago. But staying in contact throughout the years, and figuring out, what works best for you and your relationship.
I just want to draw attention to our chat box regarding the Mizzou mentoring program. It is a partnership through which each person shares knowledge, skills, information, and perspective to foster the personal and professional growth of someone else. So students, you can access the link below to input your information and locate a Mizzou mentor and start establishing a network as well. The last kind of question before we wrap up here, we have a few minutes, and then we want to provide your contact information at the end as well, and then additional resources for our students. But the last question for you all would be, do you expect to continue with virtual recruitment processes, or do you see going back to in-person recruitment post-pandemic?
I can go ahead and start with this one. We had actually started the virtual interviewing and recruitment process, again, utilizing Handshake. I can't say enough good things about it. And so I would say that we at Cerner will continue to do as much virtual recruitment as we can. We would love to be everywhere and go to every classroom presentation and every club presentation and career fair that we could get to. Unfortunately, as I think a lot of employers can sympathize with, you can only go to so many places. And so, even if we can't be somewhere, we can still, get a message into a student's Handshake inbox or things like that. So it kind of allows us to cover a lot of different bases. So I think even pre-COVID, Cerner was already kind of making that shift to a more virtual environment. So I do think employers are going to start to see a lot of benefits, and I think universities and students will as well. And so I think it's definitely the new normal.
I selfishly hope it goes back to in-person. I think that we're set up for success this year with the virtual career fairs, the virtual information sessions, events like this. However, like I said, selfishly myself, I enjoy going, and I know that our hiring managers love going out and getting out of the office and meeting the students and telling them about opportunities. So I hope for in-person, but maybe a mixture of both in the future.
I can say kind of like with Casey, I love being on campus. I love talking to the students and the other employers even. I love everything about them. And I love the resume workshops. I love the mock interviews, all of that stuff. I love to do it. I think with suretybonds.com, since we are a smaller company here in Columbia, the in-person events do serve us well, just as brand awareness. We really like those types of things. However, I do also see this as an opportunity for us to expand our proximity in terms of recruitment and hiring. So we can look at this as potentially an opportunity to, not have to be locked into the Columbia area or, nearby. Like maybe this is a time where we can expand our recruitment to nationwide and maybe remotely hire or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that I'm excited about, is maybe doing both in better ways than we've ever done before.
Well, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your insight and perspective. Just going to have Luke go ahead and put the PowerPoint back up so that way students, if some of your questions did not get answered, by all means, feel free to reach out to our panelists directly. There are the email addresses here, and then we are recording so you can access this later. We will be emailing this out to you all as well. And here are some additional resources for you. And I'll let Luke kind of wrap up here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for leading the way for our questions today. And again, thank you to our panelists for such an amazing insight and sharing your expertise. We do really appreciate you connecting with our students and helping them get better in the career development process. For our students, please consider this discussion a jumping off point to conversations about your job search. We hope you will continue the conversation with career services professionals, with recruiters, and those that support your career development process. If you have questions that were not answered today, or you would like additional clarification on the answers that were provided, please follow up with an email or schedule an appointment with the MU Career Center or your academic unit's career services office. And then we also provided the recruiters' contact emails previously, so check that out. As a reminder, early next week, we do plan to email the recording along with some additional resources to those of you who signed up for this event on Handshake. Thank you again for participating, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks again, everybody.
See you later.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Have a good day.